hopefully you're all in the right group. So we are here today to discuss the CQC well-led number 7, which is learning, improvement and innovation. This is the last one, so I don't know if that's a pleasing bit of news for you all or negative, because it means you won't be seeing us in this platform sort of anytime soon. We are hoping to do further things later on, but obviously this is being done in preparation for the CQC well-led inspection that is later this month. We have Lucy Beach with us, the Director of Safety and Patient Safety Specialist. She is the expert on this matter. The look on her face says it all. So what I will do is I will hand over to Lucy. If you can, it would be great to leave questions till the end. However, if it's kind of a priority question in regards to what Lucy has spoken about, please do sort of pop up your hands and we will try and manage that. Lucy might cover it afterwards, so that's why we try to leave it as possible to the end. So Lucy, over to you.
Okay, I'm not quite sure how I can top that introduction. I don't view myself as the expert in all of this, but I have some knowledge which I am happy to share with everybody. And I know Anna and Steve are going to come in as well from research and innovation, etc. perspective. So I suppose for me, when I look at well-led from a learning improvement perspective, I think what the CQC are really wanting us to be able to do is describe what's going on in our organisation from a safety perspective and from an improvement. So what is happening? What are our DATEX telling us? What are our complaints telling us? What is our data telling us? What is our staffing? Can we provide a narrative in terms of our teams, etc., about what is happening? And when something has happened, what have we done about it, and has it led to any impact? Now, obviously, underpinning that is a whole load of policies and processes, etc. So I thought if I started off by sort of listing those, and that staff need to be aware that these exist and hopefully have access them, and if not read them all from cover to cover in minute detail, they've looked at the one-page summary, they've got a good feeling of when you need them and what the key points are in the policy. So we've obviously got the adverse incident policy, which outlines when we DATEX something. DATEX is our system for recording any incident. There are other brands available, but the DATEX is the one we want, and we tend to call it DATEXes, but this is our incident reporting system. So that policy clearly identifies to staff what they should be reporting, when they should be reporting. It's really, really important that everybody knows that exists, can access the system and does report, because that is our system of knowing the health of the organisation. And obviously it has the limitation that it's self-report. So if staff don't report, we don't know. And a huge amount of work sits behind that DATEX and that DATEX submission. So we need to know that. That's our sort of heartbeat in terms of a safety perspective. Following on closely alongside that is the PSIRF, Patient Safety Incident Response Framework Policy, which details how, when a patient safety incident happens, how we review it further, the processes it goes through, etc. I'm very aware that that's quite a meaty tome, really. There's a lot of information in there, and we will be doing work to actually break that down into SOPs, because that's the way we're sort of going. But at the moment, there is just one document there. There's obviously the learning from deaths policy, which outlines which deaths we report and that process alongside the PSIRF process. So for staff to be aware that there are two processes, one that covers incidents as a whole, and as they progress through the patient safety process, and one that covers just deaths. And then finally, there's the complaints policy. So those are our sort of key policies from my perspective of really identifying what is going on, getting that information from the organisation, understanding what is happening so that we can learn. We obviously have the complaints team that oversee the complaints. We have the patient safety team and the lessons team. And then we also have the compliance team who helps support sort of looking at things out in practice when they're doing the visits, for example, and reporting some of the data. From a patient safety perspective, once we have gone through the processes of patient safety and got reviewed the evidence, and we have the reports and the learning, etc., we have different processes which hopefully staff are aware of to actually share that learning. And CQC are going to be really interested to know whether once we have, well, they want to know that we're reporting appropriately, that we are reviewing and investigating appropriately, but then most importantly, when we have got lessons learned, or that we're actually doing something about it. So we've got the Learning Collaborative, which meets on a monthly basis, and that's led by the lessons team, which pulls together learning from key reviews, and then that feeds into the Learning Oversight Committee. And again, it's important for all staff to be aware of the processes and how information flows. And the Learning Oversight Group, LOSC, because that's quite a mouthful, meets again on a monthly basis, and that pulls in learning from multiple perspectives. So it pulls in from leader, it pulls in from learning from deaths, it pulls in from the patient safety process. It's got a real clear evidence of emphasis on what learning needs to be transferred across the organisation, what's going to go into the Learning Lessons newsletter, what's going to be in the 5 key messages, etc. So there's a flow from the front line of reporting that DATEX, whether it goes through a complaint, whether it goes through learning from deaths, whether it goes from PSERF. There is that review process, that learning process that is collated, but then it starts to be fed back down to frontline from LOSC and LCP, so that we've got that sort of circular process of the transfer of information. All of that data from complaints, patient safety, all that learning gets gradually summarised through the Trust Quality of Care meetings up to Quality Committee. So there is that flow of information up, and also there should be, as I've said, that flow of information from LOSC down into the care unit quality of care meetings. So hopefully you can see the processes, and hopefully staff will understand those processes of how learning is transmitted across the organisation. In terms of making sure that all those processes are open and transparent, we obviously have the duty of candour process. We both have professional duty of candour, which is governed by our professional bodies, so the NMC and the GMC, and then we have that statutory requirement that we absolutely have to carry out when it's appropriate for any moderate and above harm incident. And that is reportable on through to our ICBs and also through our quality account. I think sometimes we get quite caught up with duty of candour, but basically the principle that everybody needs to hold on to is the fact of being open and transparent with patients and families and carers when things go wrong. So what it's basically saying is that we acknowledge something has gone wrong. We're not accepting that we have done something wrong. We're just acknowledging that it's gone wrong at that point. We're saying sorry to the family, the patient, etc. And we're letting them know what we're going to do about it. Is there going to be a review, etc. So it's that immediate contact with those that have been affected by anything. And I think if we hold on to those principles, those are absolutely the principles that we would want to be treated with if we're in healthcare and on the receiving end. So we need to make sure that staff are really clear on that and recognise the importance of it. We haven't been necessarily as good as in this as we should be, and we definitely haven't been great in recording that we've actually carried it out, but I think the principle is really, really important. I think involvement of families and patients, etc., in the complaints process is really strong. It's developing in our patient safety process as we're going through and we need to make sure that we are constantly involving families and the patient, if appropriate, in that process. As I've said, I think I've already mentioned around the assurance. CQC will want to see, and we need to anyway, have that flow of information up and down. So as I'm saying, from the DATEX through to the learning collaborative, through our LOSC, go through into our quality of care for the trust and up to quality committee. But then there's also that flow back down, as I've mentioned. We don't have particularly strong relations with Healthwatch from a patient safety perspective, or any other external bodies apart from the ICBs and NHS England, who we are working closely with. But again, they may ask around working with our external partners in regards to this. And then there is that element of checking that we have got a process of compliance, so that we are actually making sure that what we are saying is happening is actually happening. So we have a plethora of action plans, but how do we actually know what is going on? So we have several systems in the trust already. As I've mentioned, we've got to have the quality visits from the compliance team, who we can ask to also check things for us. We have the internal audit program, and we also have internal CQC testing. If you look down in terms of the criteria under well-led, they also focus very much on sort of the improvement elements. And I think I've already mentioned, we do have a lot of action plans, and that is probably an area for the trust, from a patient safety perspective, compliance perspective, PFD, complaints, etc., that we need to work on, because we have individual action plans for all of those. So we have a huge number, and I'm sure there is duplication between those, over those, etc. And that is something that we do need to work on. In my experience, CQC are happier when we actually know where our weaknesses are and what we need to do about them, and I think this is one that I will be talking to them about, and how we could move towards having improvement plans for areas that all the various compliance learning processes could feed into. And I think that is most of my stuff. I don't know, Steve, Anna, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I'm happy to pick up the baton on research and a bit of innovation. So I'll reference two key documents, which with the help of the comms team, we can try and get around for people's reference, because we're not doing this with slides today. The first is I produce a research and innovation update report, which updates the quality committee every 6 months on how we're doing with delivering our research and innovation strategies, plural. There is one each. I'll come on to why in a second. So the December update is the most recent one, and we'll get that round. The other reference document, which the timing of which is not amazing, but it doesn't matter, will be the quality account, because there is a short section in every annual quality account that gives the last year's performance effectively in research in particular. So I've got the draft of that material. It's pretty finished, and again I can share it in draft because it's got a few bullet points that colleagues might want to have in their pockets. So let's look at research and innovation both through a leadership and quality lens, because that's what CQC Well-Led asks us to do. So I mentioned that we have a research and an innovation strategy. They are separate. They were both published in 2023, so we're now in coming into the third year of their delivery. They are 3-year strategies. The reason we did them separately, some trusts have research and innovation as a combined enabling strategy. My personal view on strategy development is that we don't write strategies in order to keep strategy directors in long trousers. We do that in order to solve particular problems, and the issues facing research and innovation, and we went through these strategic development processes a couple of years ago, were sufficiently different to merit two separate strategies. Eventually, when these 3-year periods time out, I anticipate that we will bring them together, but for the time being, separate. So big questions are, what have we done in the last 2 years? Let me focus on research first. Most importantly, and again, well led, we have put in a new clinical leadership model. What a new leadership model in total for research. It is not particularly traditional for the director of strategy to hold the director portfolio for research, but that's the case at EPUT and has been for the last 2 years. We sit within the medical directorate for this bit of my portfolio, and we strengthened the clinical leadership a couple of years ago with the appointment of a new head of research. So that is a consultant psychiatrist who has 2 PAs ring-fenced for his work in this space. And we appointed a special senior advisor to the research team. So if you want to name drop, that's Professor Susanna Walker, for colleagues that know her, and head of research is Leo Juliaris. Leo is unfortunately leaving the trust at the end of this month, but we're in the process of re-recruiting. So new leadership model. We cemented research and innovation in the trust quality agenda also with this new set of strategies, because we know, and it is well rehearsed and well evident, that trusts that are research active have better outcomes, have lower mortality rates, and are better able to recruit and retain talented staff. So there are tangible reasons why research and innovation, but research in particular, is critically important and links to quality. So we produce this report every 6 months to the quality committee, which wasn't previously the case. Another thing that we've changed, which I think is an important indicator of well-led in this space, is that until about a year ago, the single indicator that EPUT judged its own research performance on was a rather crude and slightly obscure indicator known as accruals. It doesn't really mean anything unless you're in the business, and it is really a multiplier of how many patients we recruit into research trials, multiplied by a complexity weighting for that particular trial. So historically, EPUT's been good at doing large scale observational trials, big surveys. They're not particularly resource intensive, and you can get large numbers of patients recruited, in inverted commas. Over the last couple of years, we have moved away from doing that and rebalanced our research trial portfolio towards more interventional trials, which get they are more complex, they are more resource intensive, because we are actually doing things to patients and testing different forms of novel treatments. So we've broadened the basket of indicators away from this singular focus on accruals to a much broader way of assessing our research performance. And we've done that to align with the NIHR. So the NIHR is the national funding body for health and care research. They fund 10 of our 12 whole-time equivalent posts in the research team. So they are a major stakeholder for us. And the NIHR have, in the last year, been moving to a completely different way of awarding funding, awarding grants, and monitoring and supporting performance in delivery organisations like ours. They have 3 big priorities. And so we've aligned our performance dashboards to measure our performance in these 3 domains. The first is speed of study setup. So from the point at which a trial is authorised by the Healthcare Research Authority, the HRA, and we are selected as a site to participate, how quickly can we recruit our first patient? We are, I would say, mixed in this category. We have some trials that get up and running super quick and some that stall and take quite a long time. But that's the case for a lot of trusts. But we aspire to get faster and faster. The second performance domain is recruitment to target. So for every trial, there is an agreed target number of patients EPUT is working to recruit. We are good at that. So that shows that we set our targets appropriately. And by and large, when we commit to a certain number of patients for that trial, we by and large get to that target within the timescale. So we're strong on recruitment to target. The third is a new domain. So it's not new to EPUT in the sort of longer term past, But in the last 5 years, we have not done any commercial research. So that's partnership with largely pharmaceutical companies that want to partner with us to try their emerging interventions on our patients. This is a really important thing for EPUT to be getting into doing for lots of reasons. First and foremost, it provides access for people that we look after to novel treatments that they can't otherwise get. So that's incredibly beneficial. And secondly, we have the potential to generate quite a significant level of income, which can then be reinvested in portfolio research and, in theory, in other services. So there are not many bits of the trust that can income generate. Research can. So it's, it has enormous potential for us. We are a very desirable partner for industry players, because if they only ever partner with, the big boys in London and Cambridge and Oxford, the diversity of those populations is limited. We boast a very large and diverse, economically diverse set of populations, 1/3 rural, 1/3 coastal, 1/3 urban across Essex. I repeat that ad nauseum to all our pharmaceutical partners, because it does stand us apart from the Cambridges and the Oxfords and the UCLs. So we had our first recent crack at a commercial trial with Eli Lilly last year. We got very, very close to recruiting our first patient and getting the green light and moving ahead. But unfortunately, the whole trial globally moved so fast that we timed out. So we learned some really valuable lessons from that process around speed and agility. This is a massively competitive environment. And we've got at the moment of 4 or 5 expressions of interest that we've entered for new commercial trials. And we're very hopeful that we'll get 1 or 2 in the next year. So enormous potential there, but we're not yet off the blocks. But the NIH are watching with hawk eyes to see. They want to be seeing every delivery organisation, not just the big names, doing more and more commercial research each year. Right, what else have we been doing? We've been building capacity and capability across the various different disciplines and professions. So we've trained 2 new principal investigators and 4 new associate principal investigators in the last year. They are not all doctors, you'll be glad to know. We've had 2 awards for something called a Green Shoot scheme, which is again designed to give a senior clinician their first taste of being a principal investigator. So we had a general adult psychiatrist doing that last year, and we have a senior occupational therapist doing it this year. So if anyone knows Karen Elliott, get her to talk to you about what it's like to be an AHP principal investigator. She's running the Care Coach study, which is testing the efficacy of a particular intervention for the carers of people who live with dementia. Fantastic study going incredibly well under Karen's leadership. And we are building nursing capability and capacity as well. We have a fantastic nurse from the North East Essex community team on an NIHR internship. So she spends a day a week with the research team supporting particular studies and growing her experience and her exposure. So we hope that others will follow suit, and she'll be an evangelist for getting involved in research. We have been building strategic relationships and joint appointments with our academic partners, because this is a key enabler to success as well. So we have joint appointments with proper clinical academic appointments. We have one with UCL, we have one with University of Cambridge, and we are just about to establish a 3rd one with Anglia Ruskin University, which is very exciting. We have been doing very well this year on bringing strategic funding into the trust for research. NIH are looking favourably on EPUT at the moment, which is nice. So big good news story of the last year is that in the annual capital call, EPUT put a bid in for and were successful and have been awarded over £600,000 of capital to buy 2 new assets. One will be a mobile research unit. It's a vehicle which will create clinical space with wheels to take around the county and bring research to the people, because we know that participation in research is not at all equitable, and those that live in more geographically isolated areas traditionally do not participate so much in research, and in fact that's where prevalence is often highest, particularly conditions like dementia. So that's asset number one. Asset number two is a new mobile MRI hyperfine scanner. It's trained on AI, and it's a very new piece of equipment which is becoming a little more mainstream. So that's for neuroimaging. So again, for those patients who have to travel very, very far to get to their local neuroimaging centre, this addresses an equity gap. So those two things together, with £600,000 injection of capital from the NIHR, we will, with support from Liz's team, will be tendering, procuring and mobilising over the next 12 to 18 months. Further capital investment in now revenue form, sorry, just contradicted myself. Further financial investment in revenue form is that, and this was a great success, we put in a strategic funding bid for some ring-fenced clinical trial pharmacy resource. This has been a rate limiting factor of EPUTs for a long time, because Hillary's team is so busy supporting NHS service delivery. We haven't been able to support as smoothly with clinical trials delivery, particularly drugs trials, of course. We now have the funding agreed. This is relatively new news, about 2 weeks ago, for 18 months worth of a senior pharmacist to support research directly. So very excited to bring that online. I'm coming to the end of this now, you'll be glad to know. The risks facing research, because we do need to be honest when we're talking to the CQC, is one that the funding for research, as I've indicated, is now becoming much more performance-based. We have to drive high levels of recruitment to a larger number of studies in order not to erode our income base. So that is, we need to turn that around. And then there's the issue of learning into practice. I think that isn't something that we have completely nailed yet. So we're good at delivering research, but are we changing clinical practice based on what we know? It's hard to create the evidence of that at this stage, but I hope that this time next year we'll be in a different space. Last point to make on research is service evaluations. So not traditional research in the kind of, you know, in the sort of purely clinical academic sense, but service evaluations are a core way in which we innovate and improve service delivery as we go along. And the research team do currently oversee the mechanisms for that and authorise service evaluations. So we, on average, as a trust, deliver about 20 to 25 different service evaluation projects per year. We have large numbers of those projects are initiated through psychological services, colleagues and teams, people who are on postgraduate programmes, doctors in training who similarly are doing service evaluations as part of their training, nurses as well. So a broad range of different things. And again, the how we take the learnings of those and embed them in practice, I think, is our even better if for next year. 3 very brief points on the innovation strategy, because I've majored on research there. Similar themes. One is really building capability and capacity, again, more on the capacity side. A trend is that, well, in the wider system, in the Mid and South Essex system, we have an amazing asset, which is that we have what has been historically the MSc Innovation Fellowship. Anyone working in the legacy MSc system can apply to be part of this fellowship and get loads of support and mentorship and shared learning from a cohort. We 2 years ago had no one from EPUT on the fellowship. 2 years ago had one person on it, and this year we've had 3 EPUT colleagues on it. So we're on an upward trajectory, and it's really great to see more and more people applying for that fellowship, showing they've got wonderful innovative ideas and getting selected, which is great. The EPUT lab lives on, which is fantastic, and that's a self-selecting group of people. Anyone can join, so if you're not there and you fancy a bit of innovation talk once a month, it's a really wonderful and creative forum. That's our sort of ideas incubation space, where things are then triaged and then followed through if we think it has legs. So EPUT Lab, I think, is a real USP for EPUT, actually, and that's chaired by Dr. Justin Marley very expertly. And the last point to make is that we have reset our relationship with Health Innovation East. They are our Health Innovation Network partner, and we are using them much more robustly for horizon scanning of new innovations, and they're going to be supporting our footsteps into AI, which is one of the 3 bold shifts that we're going to need to make over the next 3 years to deliver our strategic objectives. That was quite a lot of information. Really happy to take any questions, but I'm sure Steve will have some things to add as well. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to be trying to be as succinct as possible to leave some space for the end for any questions or kind of comments. So I'm going to look at the area for well-led in regards to evidencing participation in QI for improving services. So I'll just briefly share my screen. I hope you can all see that okay. So this is our current pathway for QI that we're kind of working with. So again, if somebody wants to support with any kind of change idea or area for improvement, the contact points for that is through the single front door, which you'll be familiar with. That's been established for quite a few years now with the transformation team. We've also got QI mailbox. We also may get requests through with regards to strategic programs like the fundamentals of care or culture of care programs we've got at the moment. Any other existing system-wide, I suppose, programs of work with the transformation team, such as Community First, and any other governance processes, local governance processes, for instance, the safety improvements and safety improvement plans. So with those kind of requests coming through, we've then moved to the next step, which is like scoping out, basically. What is the kind of work? Is it a specific change that would warrant support from the transformation team? Or is it a more localized problem? Sometimes we get clinical audits coming through, so we'd refer to the clinical audit department. It may need QI support. So we're looking at assigning QI leads or QI sponsors. If it is more clinical transformation, we'd be looking at project management. And if it is more localized service delivery, we may be contacting the DDQSs or service directors or people, managers in services. And then we'd be looking to register the work. So that would be on our live QI system. So anything we're looking to with QI support from us as a support service, that would be registered on live QI. Anything regarding project management and the transformation team goes on Aspire. And then we'd look at that registration being aligned to any relevant kind of care units. So we've got specific care units that we would align with an existing strategic workflows, such as the fundamentals of care program. The progress of the projects is monitored through live QI. With care unit dashboards and dashboards for any kind of strategic workflows. And then improvement advice is offered, QI training. We've got module training accessed through the intranet. We've got QI training that we run collaboratively with Mid and South Essex Foundation Trust. And then people can also receive individual coaching or group coaching and facilitation. And then the outputs, so that the kind of progress and project status is determined by those QI leads and sponsors. And then any kind of projects that kind of are completed would be looked at where we would present them at different sharing kind of forums, such as LOSC or any quality of care forums with the care units. And then we also provide certificates for people on the closure of the projects and looking at closure summaries with learning identified. I'll maybe come out of this at the moment from our pathway and maybe share with you our Life QI system. So if we go into Life QI, we've had a license now for I think about 7 years. So this is the dashboard for the whole of the organization. You can see here we've got 66 active projects. One's been initiated in the last kind of 7, 30, 24 days. So this is quite healthy, 66 for the size of our organization. Then we're dropping down into what are completed projects, and then also cancelled projects as well, which sometimes people question around the number of cancelled projects, but the main thing is capturing the learning from when projects do get cancelled. I often like to think, are we learning to fail or failing to learn? So, cancelled projects doesn't mean they're not being useful and they've not had any impact. It's just that we need to capture the learning. They may not have set out and completed what their initial aims were, but they still do have an impact. And then we're breaking things down. So these are the projects being started per month. We've got progress scores in there as well. As you can see, the number of active projects. So again, we've been, having a Life QI license for a number of years now, and you can see the trajectory, the growth that we've got within that. And these are the different users we've currently got at the moment. So that gives an indication of those people that are accessing Life QI as a system to help support their QI work. It may be helpful that we've got access to dashboards. So as you can see, we've got all the dashboards for the individual care units with the breakdowns of activity, similar to the one that we've got organisationally that I've just shown you. Another example is the Fundamentals of Care and Culture of Care programme. So this is looking at person-centeredness. Again, we've got 14 active projects now working on them. We've got them linked. So we've got some coming through from the RISE programme that we're aligning to the Fundamentals of Care and Culture of Care. And just for you to note, then this is the interventions that we've got around this programme of work. So you've got 9 projects working on person-centred care and relational security, 6 on autism-informed care, 7 on trauma-informed, and we've got 2 on anti-racist interventions and racial equity. So then we can give the breakdown of the kind of individual projects. I will now come out of here. And yeah, I think that's the overview of our pathway. Those are what we've got registered activity. We've also got the transformation team that have the, I think it's 11 large scale across our system wide kind of projects. For example, demand, capacity and flow, as I said, community first. All these are linked in regards to the learning we've got from patient safety as well. So we've got specific projects registered that are looking on safety aspects that are coming through the learning, such as Thurrock and Grays have a family and carers kind of QI project that they're developing. And I'll leave that then for any questions or comments for both myself, Lucy and Anna.
And if not, there's just one thing I'd like to add. So what we're hoping to do over the next quarter is we have done a lot of data analysis of what our issues are in the trust, where from a quality and safety perspective, from our reviews from PFDs and action plans, etc., what has worked, what hasn't, and we're really going to try and align the work that's happening in research and innovation, the work that Steve's leading alongside our safety improvement plans and our quality priority, because at the moment we've got a lot of activity and a lot of energy out there, which is really great. But but sometimes I think we try and spread ourselves too thin in multiple areas. So predominantly from a patient safety point of view, with our new SIPs, our quality priority, and our PSAP, we will be trying to align as much as possible and really focus down on some of the really big key areas that are consistently problematic for us as a trust. Thank you. Any comments, or have we stunned you all into silence? Or you're having your lunch?
So I'd like to thank Lucy, Stephen and Anna for sharing their valuable knowledge today. There was a lot of information in that. I certainly learned a few things or two, so that was always good. So last opportunity for any questions. If not, thank you all for attending. I'm sure it was a great opportunity to, one, listen to the information that was provided, but probably also a little bit of downtime where you could grab your lunch and sort of sit and sort of have that opportunity. So thank you very much, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks a lot.